Midnight Files.
Suddenly, a flickering orange glow appeared from the side of the path. Ethan flinched as a figure stepped out from the darkness of the trees. It was an old man, wrapped in a heavy, tattered gray blanket, carrying an old kerosene lantern. He walked with a pronounced, painful limp, dragging his left foot through the gravel as he approached the iron gate. With a slow, agonizing clink of metal, he unlocked the heavy padlock and pulled the heavy chains free, pushing the creaking gates open. The old man shuffled over to the side of the SUV. Ryan rolled down the driver's window, but as the warm amber light of the lantern illuminated the old man's face, Ryan visibly recoiled in horror. The man's face was shockingly gaunt. The skin stretched so tightly over his facial bones that he looked like a walking corpse. His eyes were milky, hard, and entirely devoid of life, staring out from deep, sunken sockets. Samantha, however, showed absolutely no fear. She leaned toward the window, offering a polite nod. The old caretaker slowly raised his lantern, his dead eyes shifting from Ethan to Ryan and finally settling on Samantha. A hollow, terrifying grin stretched across his skeletal face as he rasped a welcome home to his mistress, telling her they had been waiting for her arrival for a very long time. Samantha offered a chillingly calm smile, gesturing for them to step out into the biting night air, murmuring for the boys to get inside as she opened her car door. Ethan, Ryan, and Samantha stepped out of the idling SUV. Instantly, the freezing wind of the Maine wilderness cut through Ethan's jacket, making him shiver violently. Samantha stood perfectly still, her head tilted upward, staring at the looming dark mass of the colonial mansion. Lightning flashed in the distance, casting sharp, monstrous shadows across the cracked stone facade of the house. Ethan could feel his teeth chattering, his chest tightening with every beat of his heart. Ryan stepped beside him, rubbing his hands together to stay warm, and let out a nervous laugh, remarking that it looked like they were spending the night in a real-life haunted house. Ethan could only manage a stiff, forced nod because the place looked completely dead. Without uttering a single word, the skeletal caretaker turned his back to them, carrying his flickering lantern as he began to drag his limping leg toward the massive oak front doors. Ryan told them to go on ahead with old Silas, while he drove the SUV into the covered garage to grab their bags, promising to meet them inside in a minute. Ryan climbed back into the driver's seat, slamming the door shut. Samantha turned toward the grand entrance, and Ethan felt compelled to follow her, keeping his eyes locked onto the small circle of light cast by the caretaker's lantern. As they stepped onto the porch, a heavy, rotting stench hit Ethan's nostrils, a strange chemical smell mixed with damp earth, as if the ground itself was decaying. Old Silas reached out with a pale, bone-thin hand and pushed the heavy oak door. The hinges screamed in a piercing, high-pitched wail that echoed deeply into the vast, hollow darkness of the grand entrance hall. The sound felt unnatural, vibrating right through Ethan's bones. As the door swung fully open, they stepped into a pitch-black abyss. The air inside was dense, suffocatingly stagnant, and filled with decades of trapped dust. Ethan choked back a cough, wiping his eyes, nervously asking if there was any electricity, or if they could turn on some lights. The moment the question left his lips, old Silas stopped dead in his tracks. The old man spun around with agonizing slowness, raising the kerosene lantern directly to his face. Right then, a violent crack of thunder shook the entire mansion. In the flash of lightning bleeding through the dust-covered windows, the caretaker's dead, milky eyes locked onto Ethan. His gaunt face looked entirely structural, like a skull draped in rotting parchment. A low, dry, raspy chuckle rattled in the old man's throat. Silas whispered that the storm the previous night had been furious, bringing down the power lines deep in the valley, but told the young master not to fret, because the light would return when it was meant to. His answer felt heavy and deliberate, less like an explanation and more like a warning spoken by a corpse. Samantha simply smiled, entirely unfazed. She turned her icy blue eyes toward Ethan, asking with a mocking sweetness if he was afraid of the dark. Ethan's throat went dry. He swallowed hard, shifting his gaze away from her piercing stare, and muttered that he wasn't. Samantha let out a soft laugh that offered no warmth. By then, the heavy front door creaked open again as Ryan stepped inside, carrying their duffel bags. With a loud, echoing thud, Ryan kicked the door shut behind him, plunging the grand hall back into near-total darkness. Using the kerosene lantern and a handful of thick wax candles he pulled from his tattered coat, old Silas began lighting the room. Crimson and amber flames flickered to life on the dusty dining table, the grand mantelpiece, and along the cracked wooden walls. In the dim dancing candlelight, the true nature of the Blackwood mansion began to reveal itself. The walls were lined with heavy, gilded frames holding ancient oil paintings. Ethan stepped closer, wiping a layer of thick dust from one of them. It was a portrait of a stern, 19th century landowner. But what caught Ethan's attention were the surrounding paintings, dozens of portraits of young, pale women, all staring out of the canvas with hollow, sorrowful eyes. The air felt heavy with their painted gazes. A massive, sweeping spiral staircase constructed of dark, rotting mahogany dominated the center of the hall, twisting upwards into the blackness of the upper floors where the bedrooms lay. Staring up the staircase, Samantha mentioned that her father used to come here a lot when he was younger, adding that after he passed away in an accident, the estate fell to her. She noted that it had been years since anyone walked these halls, but she had always wanted to come back. Ryan dropped the bags onto the floor, stretching his arms with a loud yawn, declaring that whatever the history was, he was absolutely starving and wanted to eat before having some real fun. But Ethan rubbed his aching temples. His body felt completely broken down from the long drive, and a heavy, exhausting sleepiness was clouding his mind. He told Ryan that every muscle in his body was aching, and that he just wanted to find a bed and pass out, suggesting they explore tomorrow instead. Ryan rolled his eyes, letting out a frustrated sigh, telling Ethan that tomorrow was a whole different day. He reminded him that they had the entire mansion to themselves tonight, questioning how Ethan could even fall asleep in a suffocating, pitch-black place like this anyway. Ryan's words had a point. The atmosphere in the house was so thick and oppressive that true rest felt like an illusion. Samantha stepped between them, her dark smile returning as she offered to show them to their rooms. She walked up the creaking mahogany stairs, and Ethan and Ryan followed closely behind. Samantha moved with an eerie familiarity, navigating the dark corridors as if she had never left. She truly loved this isolation, this complete detachment from the human world, and her preferences were becoming deeply unsettling to Ethan. They reached the upper landing. A long, narrow hallway stretched out before them, lined with closed doors. 2 doors at the very end had been left slightly ajar, where old Silas had evidently done some basic cleaning for their stay. Ethan stepped into his assigned room. It was colossal, dominated by a heavy, antique canopy bed draped in faded velvet curtains. A massive, tarnished crystal chandelier hung precariously from the high ceiling, swaying gently in the draft. The walls here were just like the hall downstairs, covered in dark, suffocating portraits of Victorian-era women. It seemed Samantha's ancestors had a profound, borderline obsessive fascination with collecting these silent, sorrowful faces. The adjacent room, where Ryan and Samantha were staying, was equally massive. Ryan, completely indifferent to the eerie decor, tossed his jacket onto a dusty armchair, ignoring Samantha as she began to murmur more stories about her family's dark lineage. Ethan stood by the doorway, listening quietly to her words, when Ryan suddenly stepped up behind Samantha, wrapping his arms tightly around her waist. Samantha flinched slightly at the sudden touch, her body stiffening for a split second before she relaxed. Ryan looked over his shoulder at Ethan with a smug grin, announcing that it was enough history lectures for one night because even he was starting to get tired. Ethan cleared his throat, feeling a sudden wave of awkwardness. He told them he would leave them to it, wishing them a good night. Ethan turned on his heel and walked quickly back to his room, closing the heavy door behind him. As he walked away, he caught one last glimpse of Samantha. She wasn't looking at Ryan. Her cold blue eyes were fixed entirely on Ethan's retreating back. Her lips curved into that sharp, enigmatic smile. Once inside his room, Ethan turned the heavy iron lock, a loud click echoing through the space. Despite the security of the lock, sleep refused to come. The silence of the mansion was deafening, broken only by the rhythmic ticking of an old grandfather clock somewhere downstairs. He lay down on the heavy, stiff mattress, staring up at the dark canopy, turning over again and again, unable to find comfort in the unfamiliar bed. Frustrated, Ethan sat up. He reached for a plastic bottle of water he had brought from the car, pressing the rim to his dry lips. He drank the remaining liquid, tossed the empty bottle onto the nightstand, and stood up. A large, arched window looked out over the back of the property. The pale, weak moonlight was bleeding through the glass, casting long silvery strips across the floorboards. Ethan walked over, leaning his forehead against the cool glass, and peered outside. Below him lay the dense black expanse of the forest, the treetops tossing violently in the howling wind. But as Ethan's eyes adjusted to the darkness, his gaze drifted further out, deep into a cleared section of the valley that they hadn't seen when they arrived. His breath hitched in his throat. Right there, shrouded in the shifting fog at the edge of the woods, lay an old abandoned colonial cemetery. Weathered, crooked tombstones protruded from the earth like jagged teeth. Right at that exact moment, a violent bolt of lightning ripped across the dark sky, illuminating the entire graveyard in a stark, blinding flash. Ethan recoiled, a cold spike of adrenaline hitting his chest. In that split second of electric light, the ancient cemetery looked sharp, terrifying, and dangerously close to the house. Then, darkness swallowed it whole again. The sound of the branches scraping against the outer walls made him jolt. Ethan quickly grabbed the heavy velvet curtains, pulling them shut to block out the view. The ticking of his watch felt incredibly loud in the silence of the room, wrapping a thick blanket tightly around his shoulders. Ethan sat back down on the edge of the bed, his eyes scanning the dark corners of the room. Suddenly, the unmistakable sound of a heavy wooden door scraping against the floorboards shattered the silence. Ethan froze, his fingers tightening around the blanket. The sound had come from the hallway, and it was incredibly close. He sat perfectly still, holding his breath, his heart hammering against his ribs, wondering who could be out there at this hour. Then came the footsteps, slow, deliberate, and quiet, as if someone was pacing right outside his door. Ethan's blood ran cold. He told himself he wouldn't open the door and would just stay hidden under the covers. But a flickering amber light suddenly bled through the gap beneath his door, the glow of a candle moving past. He reasoned it must be Ryan or Samantha, trying to calm his rising panic, thinking that maybe they needed something. Driven by a sudden anxious curiosity, Ethan threw the blanket aside, slipped into his shoes, and crept toward the door. He unlocked it with agonizing slowness, trying to muffle the sharp automotive clicks. He cracked the door open just an inch and peered out into the dark hallway. The corridor was completely empty, bathed in suffocating silence. But further down, toward the end of the hall, the heavy wooden door leading up to the attic was swinging open and shut, caught in a draft. The heavy wood slammed against the frame, making the exact sound he had heard. Ethan stepped fully into the hallway, pulling a small flashlight from his pocket. He turned it on, the bright lead beam cutting through the thick dust motes floating in the air. He walked toward Ryan and Samantha's room first, finding their door tightly shut. Deciding it was best not to disturb them, Ethan turned around, casting his flashlight down the sweeping staircase toward the ground hall. Down below, the single candle left on the dining table was sputtering violently, its flame dancing wildly in the wind. Ethan walked toward the attic stairs. As he approached the open door, his flashlight beam caught something metallic reflecting on the floor. He knelt down, discovering a heavy iron chain and a massive broken padlock lying discarded near the bottom step. The lock hadn't been opened with a key. It looked as though it had been violently snapped apart from the inside. A cold draft swept down the attic stairs, hitting Ethan's face. He shivered, his skin breaking out in goosebumps. Clutching his flashlight tightly, he began to ascend the narrow, creaking wooden steps. He stepped onto the attic floor. The air up here was freezing, and the space was cluttered with old, shrouded furniture, broken mirrors, and stacks of rotting trunks. A heavy, suffocating layer of dust covered everything, suggesting no one had stepped foot up here in decades. Suddenly, Ethan's flashlight beam faltered, his hand trembling as he brought the light to a halt at the far edge of the attic. Standing right at the edge of the room, next to a large broken window, was a figure. It was a girl, dressed in a flowing white nightgown, her back turned completely toward him, staring out into the stormy black night. Ethan's heart leaped into his throat, absolute terror paralyzing his limbs. He couldn't force himself to take a step forward, his breath coming in shallow. Ragged gasps as he choked out Samantha's name. The figure began to turn around with agonizing slowness. In his panic, Ethan's fingers slipped, and the flashlight slipped from his grasp, clattering loudly against the wooden floorboards. The beam rolled wildly across the ceiling before settling on the floor. Ethan scrambled in the dark, his hands scratching frantically against the wood until his fingers clamped around the flashlight. He lifted it, instantly washing the bright white light over the figure, now standing directly in front of him. A sharp, terrified gasp tore from Ethan's throat. It was Samantha. She was standing mere inches away from him, her skin deathly pale, a wild, unhinged peal of laughter tearing from her throat. Her eyes looked wide, manic, and completely vacant as she cackled, asking if he thought she was a ghost. Ethan backed away, his breath catching in his throat as he tried to steady his racing pulse. He forced a weak, trembling smile, nervously asking what she was doing up there in the freezing middle of the night. Samantha tilted her head, her laughter fading into a cold, hollow smile. stating that it was her mansion and she could go wherever she wanted. Ethan muttered that it was late, pointing out that he saw the candlelight and heard footsteps, thinking something was wrong. Samantha took a step closer, the white fabric of her gown shifting like mist around her feet, asking if he thought a dark spirit was wandering the halls. Ethan said softly that he just felt uneasy, admitting that the place felt strange, with the old caretaker and the ancient cemetery right behind the woods. Samantha let out a soft, mocking purr, reminding him that old Silas had been guarding the estate for over 35 years, and claiming the cemetery was just an old family plot where nobody had been buried in ages. She tauntingly asked if he wanted to go walk through it with her right then. Her eyes gleamed with a strange, malicious delight, and Ethan stared at her, a profound sense of revulsion rising in his chest as he flatly refused. Samantha laughed again, a sharp, cutting sound, teasing him about how easily he got scared. She murmured that in a vast, empty place like this, on a cold, dark night, the only thing that truly frightened her was being entirely alone, adding that she just needed someone to hold on to. Before Ethan could react, Samantha reached out, her pale fingers brushing against his cheek. Her skin felt burning hot, almost feverish. Ethan recoiled instantly, pushing her hand away, telling her to stop and asking what she was doing. Samantha's expression darkened instantly, a flash of pure, venomous rage crossing her face before she masked it with a cold pout. Ethan stepped back, his voice firm despite his panic, telling her that she was Ryan's girlfriend and his best friend, warning her that he never wanted her to touch him like that again. Samantha stood perfectly still in the shadows, her voice dropping into a dangerous low whisper as she pointed out she was his girlfriend, not his wife. She boldly claimed that Ethan knew she was truly interested in him and had felt it since the day they met. But Ethan coldly replied that he didn't feel anything for her, backing toward the attic stairs. He warned her that he wouldn't let her betray Ryan because it would destroy everything, demanding they leave the room right then. Samantha didn't utter another word. She turned abruptly, her bare feet making no sound against the dusty floorboards as she sprinted past him, disappearing down the narrow attic stairs into the darkness below. Ethan stood alone in the freezing attic for a long moment, his heart hammering against his ribs. He walked over to the attic door, pulling the heavy chain back into place and securing the broken lock as best as he could before walking heavily back to his room. The rest of the night passed in a blurred, paranoid haze. He didn't sleep a single wink. When the weak morning light finally filtered through the velvet curtains, a loud, aggressive pounding echoed on Ethan's bedroom door. He jolted up, unlocking the door with a trembling hand to find Ryan standing in the corridor with an excited grin. Samantha was standing right behind him, looking perfectly groomed and completely normal. There was no trace of the manic late-night rage on her face. She gave Ethan a polite, casual nod as if the encounter in the attic had never happened. Ryan excitedly pulled Ethan out, telling him he had to see what Samantha had just found. Samantha offered a sweet, innocent smile, holding up a heavy copper key, explaining she remembered where her father kept the keys to the old hidden basement right under the grand hall. They walked down the mahogany stairs, stopping in front of a small, narrow wooden door tucked away beneath the staircase. Samantha turned the key, the rusty mechanism groaning loudly before the door swung open to reveal a steep flight of stone steps descending into a pitch-black, cavernous, dark vault. A wave of damp, stagnant air rushed up, making them cough. Samantha lit a kerosene lamp, her eyes gleaming in the amber light as she explained it was the old ancestral archive where her family kept their most valuable secrets. Ryan clapped his hands together, completely thrilled by the mystery, urging them to go down. But Ethan placed a hand on Ryan's shoulder, a profound sense of dread locking his joints. He told Ryan to wait, warning that the place looked dangerous and suggesting they stay upstairs. Ryan just laughed it off, shaking his hand off and teasing him about being a buzzkill. Ryan began to descend the stone steps, following Samantha's lantern light. Old Silas hadn't shown up at the house yet, giving Samantha the perfect opportunity to explore without interruption. Ethan had no choice but to follow his friend down into the damp, freezing darkness of the underground vault. They stepped into a low-ceilinged stone chamber where the walls were weeping with moisture, covered in thick cobwebs and stacks of rotting wooden crates. In the center of the room sat a massive iron-bound oak chest, secured by a heavy, rusted latch. Samantha whispered that the secret buried for generations was finally going to be open. Ethan and Ryan stepped forward. Working together, they strained against the rusted iron latch, tearing away thick webs until the heavy lid of the oak chest creaked open with a loud groan. Inside, resting on a bed of rotting velvet, lay an ancient leather-bound grimoire. The leather was dark, weathered, and cracked with age. Samantha lunged forward with surprising speed, snatching the book from the chest before Ethan could even touch it. She placed the heavy grimoire on a stone table, bringing the kerosene lamp close to illuminate the pages. She began to turn the brittle yellowed sheets, her eyes scanning the bizarre ancient text written in a sharp, archaic script. Samantha murmured that it was the old dialect of her ancestors, adding that there were rules and rituals written there that must only be performed in the dead of night. She looked up, her blue eyes wide and vacant, telling Ryan that there were incantations meant to summon the spirits and wake the dead that rest beneath the land. Ethan backed away, his skin crawling, telling Samantha to close the book because it was wrong, occult garbage that needed to be destroyed or put back. But Ryan laughed, shaking his head at Ethan's panic, thrilled by the idea of staying in a real-life horror movie estate, asking whose book it was. Samantha smiled, tracing the faded ink, explaining it was brought from Europe centuries ago, written by a notorious occult scholar as a guide to connecting with dark entities. She added that it only worked if the house was built upon a gateway of supernatural energy, revealing that her great-grandfather tried to perform the ritual right there, but broke the rules, resulting in the total destruction of his entire family. She leaned closer, dropping her voice to a chilling whisper, revealing that after his family died, he took his own life right upstairs. She explained that the surviving relatives hid the grimoire away in the vault so no one would ever find it, but smiled, noting that it was finally in her hands. Ethan gripped Ryan's arm, his voice rising in panic, telling him that it wasn't a game, reminding him her family died there, and pleading to leave the basement immediately to throw the book into the river. Samantha's eyes snapped to Ethan with a cold, predatory light, stating that she had waited far too long. She insisted that since they came out to have an unforgettable trip, they should play a game to summon the spirits, promising they wouldn't break any rules. Ethan snapped back that he was not risking his life for some twisted game. Ryan stepped between them, placing a comforting hand on Ethan's chest, telling him to calm down and dismissing it as an antique myth and pure superstition. He told Ethan to relax, claiming nothing was going to happen. Ethan looked at his best friend, realizing with terrifying certainty that he couldn't stop him. Ryan was entirely blind to the danger. He turned his gaze to Samantha. Her face was twisted into a look of pure, malicious triumph, her eyes reflecting the flickering flame of the lamp like twin burning coals. Samantha wouldn't let either of them touch the book again. She closed the heavy leather cover with a sharp thud, locking it away in her room as they spent the rest of the day in an uncomfortable, fragile silence. Outside, the sun began its rapid descent, the weak daylight bleeding out of the sky until it was completely swallowed by a thick, suffocating darkness. The storm that had been threatening all day finally rolled in. Heavy, bruised clouds blotted out the stars, and the wind began to howl through the valley, rattling the ancient glass panes of the mansion. Inside the grand hall, the shadows stretched and lengthened until the entire house felt like a shifting, breathing maze. Nobody spoke. The careless, arrogant energy Ryan had carried all morning had faded into a tense, brooding silence. Ethan sat on the dusty sofa, his eyes shifting nervously between his friend and Samantha. Samantha sat at the grand dining table, illuminated only by a cluster of flickering wax candles. She placed the ancient grimoire in front of her, gently wiping away the residual dust from the leather cover. With slow, deliberate movements, she opened the book. Ethan